He promised her forever on a rooftop in Manhattan. At the time, he meant it. Before we begin, tell me something honestly. Do you believe a promise should survive pressure, or does pressure reveal what was never strong enough? If you believe that love should be chosen boldly, not negotiated quietly, then you're in the right place. Tonight's story isn't just about a billionaire. It's about a promise that cost everything. And if stories that hit deep speak to you, subscribe, turn on your notifications, and let's dive into something unforgettable. Elias Whitmore woke before the sun touched the skyline. The penthouse was silent, 47 floors above Fifth Avenue. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a private possession. Yellow taxis crawled below. Steam lifted from grates in thin ghosts. He stood in front of the glass, hands behind his back. People assumed men like him felt powerful every morning. They were wrong. What he felt was expectation. Whitmore men did not drift through life. They inherited it, shaped it, preserved it. His grandfather built the empire. His father expanded it. Elias was meant to fortify it. Love had never been mentioned in those conversations. At breakfast, his mother sat perfectly composed at the 12-seat marble table. Your father spoke with the Harringtons, she said without looking up from her espresso. Their daughter is returning from London next month. Elias poured his coffee slowly. And nothing, she replied. I'm simply saying, strategic marriages are not a new concept. He met her eyes. I'm not a merger. No, she said calmly. You're an heir. The difference lingered between them like cold air. Across Brooklyn, Zaria Bennett was already late. She rushed down the brownstone steps, locking the door behind her, curls pulled into a low bun. The air smelled like early fall crisp, edged with possibility. She worked at a non-profit literacy center 2 subway stops from Manhattan. The building was modest. The paint chipped near the windows. But inside, there was warmth. Kids greeted her by name. Miss Zaria, you said we'd finish the poem today. She laughed, dropping her bag onto her desk. Only if you promise to actually read it this time. She believed in simple things: effort, honesty, showing up. Her best friend Amaya leaned against the doorframe during lunch break. You're going to that gala tonight, right? Zaria groaned softly. It's not a gala. It's a charity fundraiser. In Manhattan, Amaya corrected. With rich men who look like cologne ads. Zaria shook her head. I'm not going to meet a billionaire. You don't know that. I don't want that. She meant it. She wanted something steadier than money. That evening, Manhattan shimmered. The Whitmore Foundation annual benefit took over a glass-walled venue overlooking the Hudson. Crystal chandeliers, string quartet, waiters gliding between tailored suits and silk gowns. Elias hated these events. He knew every face. Every handshake was rehearsed. Every compliment measured. He loosened his tie slightly. Then he saw her. Not because she sparkled. Because she didn't. Zaria stood near the balcony doors, staring at the skyline like she was memorizing it. Her dress was simple. Navy. Elegant without trying. She looked like she belonged to herself. He approached without thinking. You look like you're planning an escape, he said. She didn't startle. She turned slowly. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's done it before. A corner of her mouth lifted. So which exit would you recommend? Service elevator, he replied. Less dramatic. She studied him more carefully now. You don't seem like someone who takes the service elevator. He smiled, not the practiced version. The real one. Maybe I'm tired of the main entrance. There was something in his tone. Not arrogance. Not charm. Honesty. They stepped onto the balcony together. Wind brushed her curls loose. You're Elias Whitmore, she said after a moment. And you're not impressed. I'm observant. He leaned against the railing. That's more dangerous. She laughed softly. Silence followed, but it wasn't awkward. Below them, boats drifted along the Hudson. The city hummed. Distant sirens. Taxi horns. Life moving without permission. You fund the literacy program in Brooklyn, she said quietly. His brow furrowed. You work there? I do. He nodded once. Then this event isn't entirely useless. She looked at him, then directly. Why do you look like you don't believe that? He hesitated. Because admitting the truth would mean cracking something open. I was raised to think impact is calculated, he said finally. Measurable. And you disagree? I don't know. She held his gaze. Impact isn't always loud. The words settled somewhere inside him. Later that night, fireworks erupted over the river, part of the Foundation's spectacle. They stood shoulder to shoulder, colors reflecting in the glass behind them. He didn't plan to say what came next. It slipped out unguarded. I don't date casually. She turned slightly. That sounds intense. I don't do temporary, he clarified. If I choose someone, it's long-term. Her expression softened, but caution lingered. Don't promise what you can't protect. The wind lifted again. He could have deflected, made a joke, shifted the tone. Instead, he said quietly, I don't break my word. For the first time that evening, she looked unsure. Not because she didn't want to believe him, because she did. As the night ended, they exchanged numbers without ceremony. No dramatic music, no exaggerated flirting, just possibility. When Elias returned to his penthouse, he didn't stand at the window. He sat on the couch and replayed her voice. Across the river, Zarya lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Amaya texted, well? Zarya typed slowly. He feels different. Good different? She hesitated. Dangerous different. Because men raised in empires don't fall in love easily. And when they do, the cost is never small. New York did not slow down for love. It pulsed. It roared. It demanded. But somehow, in the middle of that noise, Elias Whitmore found stillness with Zarya Bennett. Their first real date wasn't extravagant. No private jet. No rooftop buyout. Just a quiet restaurant in Soho where the lights were low and the tables close enough to hear each other breathe. She arrived 5 minutes late. You own half the city, she said as she sat down. And you choose this place? I don't need an audience, he replied. She studied him carefully. You're different outside those suits. And you're exactly the same. Is that a compliment? It's rare. Dinner stretched into hours. They talked about childhood, hers in a modest Brooklyn apartment, his in a Manhattan townhouse that felt more like a museum than a home. My father believed emotions were distractions, Elias admitted. And you? She asked. He swirled his glass slowly. I think emotions are liabilities. Then why are you here? Because I don't feel weak around you. He didn't say it out loud. Instead, because you challenge me. She smiled. That's not a safe answer. Safe isn't interesting. Weeks passed. He started showing up in Brooklyn unannounced. Not with cameras. Not with bodyguards. Just him. He sat in the back of her literacy center once, watching her teach. She moved differently there, grounded, confident, certain. After class, she caught him leaning against the hallway wall. You're intimidating the 7th graders. They don't scare easily. She stepped closer. Why are you really here? He hesitated, then said it plainly. Because this matters to you. Something in her expression shifted. You don't have to prove anything to me. I'm not proving, he said quietly. I'm learning. The first time he brought her to his penthouse, she stood near the windows, just as she had that night at the gala. But this time, the city looked different. Closer. More vulnerable. You live above everything, she murmured. He watched her reflection in the glass. Sometimes it feels like I'm outside of it. She turned. That sounds lonely. It's efficient. That's not what I said. Silence. Then she crossed the room slowly. You don't have to be efficient with me. He swallowed. That was the moment. Not fireworks. Not grand gestures. Just vulnerability. He reached for her hand. If I choose you, he said carefully, it's not temporary. Her eyes searched his. Don't say forever unless you mean it. He stepped closer. I mean it. The word hung between them. Forever. Dangerous. Beautiful. Absolute. She let herself believe him. But Manhattan always watches. And so did his family. Sunday dinners at the Whitmore townhouse were ritual. Crystal glasses. Polished silver. Expectations carved into every surface. His mother noticed the change first. You're distracted, she said as dessert was served. I'm thinking. About what? About what I want. His father set down his fork slowly. What you want, he repeated. Or what you're responsible for. Elias held his gaze. Those don't have to conflict. They often do. His mother leaned forward slightly. The Harrington dinner is next month. I'm not attending. The temperature at the table dropped. You will, his father replied calmly. Legacy isn't a suggestion. Elias stood. For the first time in my life, he said evenly, I'm choosing something for myself. He left before they could respond. That night, he went to Zarya. No announcement. No call. She opened the door in sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt. You look like you're about to fight someone, she said. I already did. She stepped aside, letting him in. He paced once across her living room. They expect me to marry strategically. She didn't react immediately. Meaning someone appropriate. Connected. Useful. And I'm not. His head snapped toward her. That's not what I... Then what? He moved closer, frustration breaking through his usual control. You are the only thing that feels real right now. Her voice softened. That's not an answer, Elias. He cupped her face gently. It's the truth. She searched him carefully. You're not used to fighting your family. No. And you don't know how far you're willing to go. The honesty in that statement stung. He lowered his voice. If I have to choose, I choose you. There it was. Clear. Firm. She inhaled slowly. You're sure? Yes. The word came without hesitation. And in that moment, he believed it. They stood on her small rooftop later that evening. Not Manhattan's glittering skyline. Just Brooklyn rooftops and distant city glow. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. I don't break my word, he whispered against her temple. She closed her eyes. Don't make me regret trusting you. I won't. Below them, the city kept moving. Unbothered. Unaware. But pressure does not disappear because it is defied. It waits. It studies. It tests. And sometimes, it wins. It began with small absences. Missed calls. Delayed replies. Meetings that stretched longer than they needed to. Zarya noticed before she allowed herself to admit it. Elias had always been busy. That wasn't new. What was new was the distance in his voice. One Thursday evening, she sat on her couch grading papers, her phone face up on the coffee table. It had been 3 hours since his last message. Board dinner. We'll call after. He hadn't. At midnight, the screen finally lit up. Sorry. Long night. She stared at the words. No explanation. No warmth. She typed slowly. Are you okay? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then, just pressure. She set the phone down without responding. Pressure. It was the first crack in a promise that had once sounded unbreakable. Across Manhattan, Elias sat at the head of a conference table in the Whitmore townhouse. Not a corporate boardroom. Family. His father stood near the fireplace, posture rigid. You're distracted, his father said evenly. I'm focused. On her. The word lingered like accusation. She has a name, Elias replied, and no legacy attached to it. Silence thickened. His mother spoke next. Elias, we are not villains. We are practical. The Harrington alliance strengthens 3 generations. I am not marrying for leverage. His father's gaze hardened. You think love sustains empires? I don't care about sustaining empires. The sentence landed heavier than he intended. His mother inhaled sharply. You will, she said quietly, when you realize what it costs to abandon them. Later that night, he drove to Brooklyn. He didn't text first. When Zarya opened the door, she didn't smile. You look tired, she said. I am. From what? He stepped inside, removing his coat slowly. Family. She folded her arms loosely. They don't approve. No. And that matters to you. He didn't answer immediately. That hesitation did more damage than words. Her voice softened, not weak, but careful. I don't need their approval. I know. But you do. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration slipping through his control. You think this is easy for me? I think, she said calmly, that you've never had to choose something that disappointed them. The truth hit harder than any accusation. He sat down heavily on her couch. You don't understand what it means to carry a name like mine. You're right, she replied. I don't. She moved closer. But I do understand what it means to be chosen. He looked up. And right now, I don't feel chosen. The words were quiet. But they cut. The Harrington dinner happened anyway. Elias hadn't agreed to attend. But he showed up. The dining room glittered with polished silver and subtle wealth. Across from him sat Victoria Harrington, poised, educated, beautiful in a way that photographed well. She spoke with precision. You're expected to expand internationally within 2 years, she said. My father believes combining resources would accelerate that. Elias listened, analyzed, calculated. Across the table, his father watched him closely. Victoria smiled politely. We'd make a powerful pair. Powerful, efficient, strategic. Not once did she ask what he loved. Not once did she look at him the way Zarya did, like she saw the man, not the empire. Still, he didn't leave. And that decision echoed. Zarya found out through society pages. A photograph. Elias and Victoria leaving the Harrington estate. The headline, a promising alliance. Her stomach dropped. When he arrived that evening, she didn't let him speak first. Were you going to tell me? His brow furrowed. Tell you what. She held up her phone. His jaw tightened. It wasn't like that. Then what was it? Obligation. You looked comfortable. He exhaled sharply. You're reading into a picture. I'm reading into your silence. The air between them felt thinner. He stepped closer. You said you trusted me. I did. The past tense landed like a bruise. He corrected. Then stop making me defend your choices. He stared at her. For the first time, doubt crept in, not about loving her, but about surviving what loving her would cost. Days turned colder. Their conversations grew shorter. He still came, still held her, still whispered promises. But something underneath had shifted. He began calculating outcomes. What would happen if he refused the Harrington alliance? What would happen if he defied his father publicly? What would happen if he chose her and lost everything else? Legacy pressed harder. Love felt increasingly fragile. One evening, she traced her fingers along his chest as they lay in bed. Are you scared? She asked softly. Of what? Of losing them. He stared at the ceiling. Yes. And of losing me? He turned toward her slowly. Yes. She nodded once. Then don't lose me. He pulled her closer. I won't. But this time, his voice lacked certainty, and she heard it. Pressure doesn't destroy love instantly. It erodes it. One compromise at a time. One silence at a time. One dinner you didn't want to attend, but did anyway. By the end of that winter, Elias was no longer fighting his family. He was negotiating with them. And negotiations always require sacrifice. The question was no longer whether he loved Zaria. The question was whether he loved her enough to risk becoming someone his family would never forgive. By spring, Manhattan felt brighter. To everyone except Elias. His mother invited him to lunch at the Whitmore Club, a place so exclusive it didn't need signage. Dark wood walls. Oil portraits. Generations of men staring down from gilded frames. Legacy had a smell. Leather. Old money. Expectation. His mother stirred her tea slowly. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm not marrying Victoria. You don't have to love her. The sentence landed with surgical precision. You need stability. Partnership. Alignment. I have that. With a schoolteacher in Brooklyn? Her tone wasn't cruel. It was dismissive. She is more grounded than anyone I've ever met, Elias replied quietly. His mother leaned back. And what happens when the board questions her background? When the press digs into her family? When investors whisper? She can handle herself. That's not the point. Her voice softened, but her eyes didn't. You are not marrying for romance. You are marrying for the Whitmore name. He held her gaze. And if I refuse? She didn't hesitate. Then your father restructures control of the foundation. You lose voting authority. You lose position. Silence. Not a threat. A consequence. That night, Elias didn't go to Brooklyn. He stayed in his penthouse, staring at the skyline. 47 floors up. Above the noise. Above the mess. He had always believed control was strength. But love required surrender. And surrender had never been modeled in his world. His phone buzzed. Zaria. He let it ring once. Twice. Then answered. You're quiet lately, she said gently. Work. That's not what I meant. He exhaled slowly. There's pressure. From them. Yes. And he paused. She heard it again, that hesitation. What are they offering you? She asked. Stability. And what am I? He closed his eyes. You're not unstable. That's not what I asked. Her voice wasn't angry. It was wounded. He leaned against the window. If I lose the board's support, I lose the foundation. And that matters more than me. No. The answer came quickly, but not convincingly. 2 weeks later, the Harrington family hosted a public charity auction. Elias had declined. Then his father announced his attendance anyway. When he arrived, cameras flashed immediately. Victoria stood beside him effortlessly. Poised. Prepared. She slipped her arm through his as if it belonged there. Across the room, society watched. Whispers traveled faster than wine. Victoria leaned toward him. You look tense. I didn't agree to this. You didn't refuse. There it was. Precision. She wasn't cruel. She was strategic. The evening unfolded like choreography. They bid jointly on a hospital wing donation. They smiled for photographs. They looked aligned. At one point, Victoria's father raised a glass. To the future of two remarkable families. Applause. Elias didn't smile, but he didn't object either. And silence, in rooms like this, is consent. Zaria saw the announcement the next morning. Whitmore and Harrington families signal historic partnership. The photograph was clear. Victoria's hand resting confidently on his arm. He looked composed, controlled, like a man making peace with a decision. Zaria's chest tightened. She didn't call him. She waited. That evening, he arrived unannounced. He looked exhausted. She didn't invite him in immediately. "Are you engaged?" she asked quietly. "No." "Are you going to be?" He didn't answer right away. Her throat tightened. "That's all I needed to know." He stepped forward quickly. "It's not final. You shouldn't need to think this hard about choosing me." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what I stand to lose." Her eyes flashed. "No, you don't understand what I already have." Silence fell between them like something breaking. "I built my life without your money," she continued. "Without your name. I will survive without it. That's not what I want." "Then prove it." The simplicity of that sentence frightened him more than any boardroom ultimatum. Days later, his father summoned him again. "This is no longer private," his father said calmly. "The market is anticipating this alliance. I didn't confirm anything. You didn't deny it." Elias ran a hand over his face. "You're asking me to trade something real for optics. I'm asking you to be responsible." "Responsible to who?" "To your future." He laughed once bitter, quiet. "You mean your legacy?" His father's expression hardened. "You are the legacy." And in that moment, Elias understood something. He had been raised to believe love was optional. Duty was not. He went to Brooklyn that night with determination in his chest. He would choose her. He would fight. He would say the words clearly. But when he arrived, Zaria was dressed for dinner. "You're going somewhere?" he asked. "Yes." "With who?" She met his gaze calmly. "Someone who doesn't hesitate when he chooses me." The words struck deeper than anger ever could. His chest tightened. "You're punishing me." "No," she said softly. "I'm protecting myself." He stepped closer. "I haven't made a decision." "That's exactly the problem." Silence. Then she whispered the sentence that would echo for years. "I deserve a man who is certain." He reached for her hand. She stepped back. "For once," she said, "be honest with yourself before you come back here." The door closed gently. Not slammed. Not dramatic. Just final. Elias stood on that Brooklyn sidewalk long after she disappeared inside. Traffic passed. Neighbors walked by. The world continued. But something inside him shifted. Not enough to act immediately. Not enough to defy his father. Just enough to feel the weight of what indecision costs. And sometimes, indecision is the decision. Elias didn't sleep the night before he told her. The decision had been made in a quiet study lined with portraits of men who never flinched. His father hadn't raised his voice. He didn't need to. "You will announce your engagement at the Harrington Spring benefit," his father said evenly. "It stabilizes speculation. And if I refuse?" "You won't." Silence followed. Not because Elias agreed. Because he was tired. Tired of pushing. Tired of resisting. Tired of feeling like love required war. He signed nothing. But he didn't walk away. And that was enough. The next evening, he drove to Brooklyn with a weight in his chest that felt physical. The city blurred past him. He rehearsed sentences at every red light. "It's temporary. It's strategic. It doesn't change how I feel." Each one sounded hollow. When Zaria opened the door, she knew. There are moments when women know. "You made your decision," she said softly. He stepped inside. "Yes." She didn't cry. Didn't yell. Just nodded once. "Tell me." He swallowed. "I'm going to announce an engagement to Victoria." The words landed between them like broken glass. She held his gaze. "For how long?" He hesitated. "Until the merger stabilizes." Her lips parted slightly, not in shock. In disbelief. "You're marrying her." "It's structured." "That's not what I asked." "Yes," he said finally. "Yes." Silence filled the room. Heavy. Airless. "You told me," she began carefully, "that you don't do temporary." "I don't. But I am." The quiet accuracy of that sentence shook him. "No," he insisted. "You're not temporary. I'm not chosen." He stepped forward, reaching for her hands. "I still love you." Her laugh was soft. Almost gentle. "That's the worst part." He froze. "You love me," she continued, "but not enough to stand beside me." "It's complicated." "No," she said calmly. "It's simple." She pulled her hands away. "You chose legacy." He tried to explain. "There are layers to this. Legal, financial, public." "I don't care about layers," she whispered. "I care about your word." He closed his eyes briefly. I'm doing what I have to. No, she corrected. You're doing what feels safer. The truth cut. Because it was true. He moved toward her again, desperate now. This doesn't mean we end. That was the moment her expression changed. Not sadness. Not anger. Clarity. You think I'm going to wait? I'm asking you to understand. She shook her head slowly. You don't ask someone to understand betrayal. It's not betrayal. You promised forever. Her voice cracked slightly for the first time. Forever doesn't pause for convenience. He felt something fracture inside his chest. I never meant to hurt you. I know, she said quietly, and that almost makes it worse. Tears filled her eyes now, but she refused to let them fall. Do you know what hurts most? She asked. He couldn't answer. You didn't even fight hard enough to lose. The words struck deep. He had negotiated, strategized, calculated, but he had not fought. Not fully. They stood facing each other in the small Brooklyn living room where he had once whispered certainty. Everything felt smaller now, more fragile. I need to hear you say it, she said finally. Say what? That you're choosing her. He couldn't breathe for a second. Then he said it. I'm choosing the engagement. She closed her eyes. One tear slipped free. When she opened them again, something had changed. Then I'm choosing myself. He stepped forward quickly. Zarya. No. Her voice was steady now. You don't get to marry another woman and keep me in the shadows. That's not what this is. It is exactly what this is. She walked to the door and opened it. I loved you, she said softly. He felt his throat tighten. I love you. She met his eyes one last time. But love without courage isn't enough. He wanted to say something heroic, something redeeming. Instead, he stood there, silent. And silence, again, became his answer. She didn't slam the door. She didn't scream. She just closed it gently. And that softness hurt more than rage ever could. The engagement announcement came 3 days later. Public. Polished. Final. Elias stood beside Victoria as cameras flashed. Applause echoed. He felt nothing. Across Brooklyn, Zarya turned off her phone. She didn't attend work that day. Not because she was broken. Because she was grieving something that had once felt sacred. He had promised forever. And she had believed him. That belief was what truly shattered. The wedding was flawless. The cathedral on the Upper East Side gleamed under morning light. White roses lined the aisle. The guest list read like a financial index. Every detail had been curated. Every photograph intentional. Victoria Harrington looked composed in ivory silk, her smile steady, her posture regal. She had prepared for this life long before Elias entered it. Elias stood at the altar, tailored to perfection. He looked calm, controlled, unshakable. Inside, he felt detached. When the officiant asked if he took Victoria as his wife, there was no tremor in his voice. I do. Applause followed. Legacy secured. Partnership formalized. The Whitmore name preserved. Somewhere beneath the cathedral's vaulted ceiling, something inside him went quiet. Not broken, just silent. Married life began in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, not his old one. This one was newly renovated. Neutral. Shared. Victoria was efficient in her affection. She organized charity luncheons, met with designers, managed press appearances with precision. At dinner, conversations revolved around expansion plans and philanthropic optics. Your interview next week should emphasize family continuity, she advised one evening, flipping through briefing notes. Investors respond to stability. He nodded absently. You're distracted, she observed without looking up. I'm tired. You've been tired for months. There was no accusation in her voice, just observation. He studied her carefully. Are you happy? She paused briefly. Happiness isn't the objective. And what is? Alignment. She finally looked at him. We both understood this arrangement. He did. That was the problem. At night, he lay awake beside her. She slept easily. He stared at the ceiling. Regret does not announce itself loudly. It creeps in through small memories. The way Zarya laughed unexpectedly. The way she challenged him without fear. The way she looked at him like he was a man, not an institution. He closed his eyes, trying to quiet it. He had made a responsible decision. Responsible men do not dwell. Responsible men move forward. One evening, 3 months into the marriage, Victoria hosted a private dinner for potential investors. The apartment glittered under soft lighting. Guests complimented the decor, praised their union. You two look perfectly matched, one woman said with a smile. Victoria responded smoothly. We understand each other. Elias felt the weight of that sentence. After the guests left, he loosened his tie and poured himself a drink. You're distant, Victoria said quietly from across the room. He didn't deny it. Do you regret it? She asked. Regret what? This. He hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. She nodded once. I didn't expect romance, she said calmly. But I did expect commitment. You have that. In public, she replied. Not here. He studied her more closely now. You knew this wasn't love? I knew it wasn't passion, she corrected. I assumed partnership would compensate. He exhaled slowly. It doesn't. Silence stretched between them. I don't need grand gestures, she continued. I need presence. He couldn't give her that, because presence requires the heart, and his had not relocated. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Zarya rebuilt quietly. The first months were the hardest, not because she doubted her worth, but because she had believed him. Believed the way he said forever like it was unbreakable. She threw herself into work, expanded the literacy program, secured independent funding, no Whitmore connections. One evening, during a fundraising event for her nonprofit, she met Daniel Cole. He wasn't flashy, didn't wear legacy-like armor. He was a pediatric surgeon from Queens with steady eyes and a calm voice. You speak like you mean it, he told her after her presentation. I do. That's rare. She smiled faintly. I've heard that before. Daniel didn't rush her, didn't demand attention. He showed up consistently. Coffee on Tuesdays, bookstore visits on Saturdays. No grand promises, just presence. And slowly, that steadiness began to feel safe. 6 months into his marriage, Elias attended a charity function he once would have avoided. Midway through the evening, he saw her. Zarya stood across the ballroom in a deep emerald dress, speaking animatedly with a tall man beside her. Daniel. Elias felt it instantly. Not jealousy, something sharper. Realization. She looked different. Not wounded. Not waiting. Grounded. Alive. Victoria followed his gaze. You know her? Yes. Past? Yes. Victoria studied Zarya briefly. She looks at him differently. The comment was neutral, observational. Elias couldn't look away. Daniel leaned closer to Zarya as she laughed. There was no tension in her shoulders. No guarded hesitation. Just ease. That ease struck him harder than anger ever could, because it meant she had healed. Without him. That night, back at the apartment, Victoria removed her earrings slowly. You love her, she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Elias didn't respond immediately. Then, yes. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. And yet you married me. Yes. Why? He stared at the skyline through the glass. Because I thought I could live without love. And can you? He didn't answer. The silence was enough. Marriage, he realized, is not destroyed by shouting. It's eroded by absence. Victoria stopped reaching for his hand in public. He stopped pretending to look at her the way a husband should. They were polite, efficient, cold. Legacy had been preserved, but peace had not. And regret. Regret had finally found its voice. Regret does not arrive in a single dramatic moment. It accumulates. One empty dinner at a time. One silent car ride. One memory that refuses to fade. By their first anniversary, Elias and Victoria no longer pretended. They shared a space, not a life. The celebration dinner was scheduled by their publicist. A private rooftop in Midtown. String lights. Curated wine list. Discreet photographers positioned at strategic angles. They stood side by side as flashes captured what looked like stability. Victoria leaned toward him slightly for the camera. Smile, she murmured. He did. It felt mechanical. Later, when the photographers left and the rooftop emptied, they remained seated across from one another. The city stretched beneath them, brilliant, indifferent. We don't have to keep performing, Victoria said calmly. I know. You're somewhere else. Yes. She folded her hands neatly on the table. I won't compete with a ghost. He flinched slightly. She's not a ghost. No, Victoria corrected. She's the woman you chose first. Silence. He stared at his glass. I thought I could manage it, he admitted. Compartmentalize. And I can't. Victoria nodded once. There was no anger in her expression, only clarity. You married responsibility, she said softly. But your heart married someone else. He looked up at her, then really looked. I didn't mean to hurt you. I know, she replied. That's what makes it tragic. She stood, smoothing her dress. We'll discuss logistics soon. Logistics? Yes. Her voice was steady. Because unlike you, I don't believe in staying where I'm not fully chosen. The words echoed something painfully familiar. She walked toward the elevator without looking back. For the second time in his life, a woman he respected walked away with dignity. And he stood still. Weeks later, divorce discussions began quietly. No scandal, no accusations, just mutual acknowledgement of absence. The press framed it as irreconcilable differences. Elias didn't correct them. Irreconcilable was accurate. You cannot reconcile love with convenience. You cannot reconcile fear with promise. The real shatterpoint came unexpectedly. It wasn't at a board meeting. It wasn't during legal negotiations. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. He was leaving a private donor luncheon when he saw her again. Zaria. Across the street outside a bookstore in Tribeca, Daniel stood beside her. They weren't dressed for an event. No glamour. No spotlight. Just ordinary afternoon light. Daniel reached into his coat pocket. Elias slowed instinctively. He didn't know why. Then he saw it. A small velvet box. His chest tightened. Daniel opened it. Zaria's hand flew to her mouth. Tears filled her eyes instantly. Not wounded tears. Joyful ones. She nodded. Daniel slid the ring onto her finger. Passers-by applauded lightly. Someone cheered. She laughed the same unfiltered laugh Elias used to replay in his mind. Only now, it wasn't for him. He didn't move. Didn't interrupt. Didn't call out. He stood on the opposite sidewalk like a spectator in a life he had forfeited. This was not dramatic devastation. No collapse to his knees. No cinematic music. Just quiet, irreversible truth. She had chosen someone who was certain. Someone who did not hesitate. Someone who did not negotiate her worth. And she looked peaceful. That was the part that hurt most. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She had simply moved forward. Without him. That night, Elias didn't go home immediately. He drove aimlessly through Manhattan. Past the gala venue where they met. Past the Whitmore townhouse. Past the Brooklyn Bridge entrance, but he didn't cross it. He stopped near the Hudson. Stepped out of the car. The wind was sharp. Cold. Unforgiving. He leaned against the railing, staring at the dark water below. For the first time since childhood, he allowed himself to feel without calculating outcome. He remembered the rooftop in Brooklyn. Her voice saying, "Don't promise what you can't protect." He remembered replying, "I don't break my word." He had broken it. Not out of cruelty. Out of fear. And fear had cost him the only thing that ever felt real. Tears came unexpectedly. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady. A release he had denied himself for years. He finally understood something his father never taught him. Legacy does not warm an empty bed. Power does not answer when your name is called in the dark. And responsibility cannot replace love. He had not lost her because she wasn't strong enough. He lost her because he wasn't brave enough. The realization settled deep. Permanent. And for the first time, he didn't blame his family. He didn't blame pressure. He blamed himself. That was the true shatterpoint. Ownership. Elias did not call her immediately. Impulse would have been selfish. He waited 3 days. 3 days of sitting with the truth. 3 days of replaying the moment she said yes to another man. 3 days of asking himself one question. If she never chooses me again, can I still tell her the truth? On the 4th day, he crossed the Brooklyn Bridge. Not as a billionaire. Not as a Whitmore heir. Just as a man who had finally stopped negotiating with himself. Her nonprofit office was modest. Brick exterior. Large front windows. A chalkboard sign that read, "Words build futures." He stood outside for a full minute before going in. The receptionist recognized him immediately. "She's in a meeting. I'll wait." He didn't sit. He stood near the window, hands clasped loosely in front of him. No rehearsed speech. No defense. When Zaria stepped out of the conference room and saw him, she froze. Not dramatically, just still. Her engagement ring caught the afternoon light. It was simple, elegant, certain. "You shouldn't be here," she said calmly. "I know. Then why are you?" He swallowed once. "Not to change your mind." A flicker of skepticism crossed her face. "Then what?" "To tell the truth." She glanced toward the receptionist. 5 minutes, she said quietly. They stepped into her office. The door closed softly behind them. For a moment, neither spoke. This room held no ghosts. No penthouse windows. No family portraits. Just bookshelves and framed photos of students she had helped. He felt smaller here. And that was right. I broke my word, he said finally. She didn't interrupt. I told myself it was responsibility, strategy, timing. His voice was steady, but stripped of ego. It was fear. Her jaw tightened slightly. You chose fear. Yes. Silence. I loved you, he continued. But I loved approval more. The honesty stung even him. She looked down briefly at her ring. I needed certainty, she said. I know. I asked you to fight. I should have. The words came without hesitation. I thought compromise was maturity. I didn't realize courage was. She met his eyes then. There was no softness in them. But there was no hatred either. That realization came late. Yes. Another pause. He took a breath. I'm not here to ask you to leave him. Her shoulders relaxed slightly, just slightly. I won't insult your happiness by pretending I deserve it. The room felt heavier. Real. I needed you to know, he said, that you weren't not enough. Her eyes flickered. It was never about your background or your world. It was about my weakness. A long silence settled between them. You could have told me that a year ago, she said quietly. Yes. And you didn't. No. Her voice softened just a fraction. Why now? Because watching you choose someone who doesn't hesitate, he exhaled. It made me understand what I cost us. She studied him carefully. You look different. I am. How? I stopped blaming my father. The sentence lingered. She nodded once. That's a start. He let a faint, sad smile touch his lips. I don't expect forgiveness. Good. He deserved that. But I hope one day, he continued, when you think of me, it won't feel like betrayal. Just a man who wasn't ready. Her eyes glistened slightly, though she kept her composure. You were ready, she said softly. You just weren't brave. The precision of that statement didn't wound him. It clarified him. I'm trying to be now. For who? He paused. For myself. That answer mattered. Because if he had said for you, it would still be about her. She leaned back slightly. I don't hate you, she admitted. Relief flickered across his face, but he contained it. That means more than you know. But don't mistake that for unfinished business. He nodded. I won't. Silence again. But it wasn't hostile. It was closure forming. I hope he treats you the way you deserve, Elias said quietly. She looked at him for a long moment. He does. That sentence landed gently. Not as punishment, as truth. He stepped back toward the door. I won't come again. She believed him, and that belief felt strangely respectful. As he opened the door, she spoke once more. Elias. He turned. You loved me, she said. Yes. Next time, choose like it matters. He held her gaze. I will. Then he left. No dramatic music. No last-minute confession. Just a man walking out of the office of the woman he once promised forever. Outside, Brooklyn felt different. Quieter. Honest. He didn't feel redeemed. He felt accountable. And accountability is heavier than regret. But it is also cleaner. For the first time in years, he wasn't performing. He wasn't calculating. He was simply aware. And awareness is where change begins. 3 years passed. New York did what it always does. It moved forward. Elias no longer lived in the penthouse overlooking Central Park. After the divorce, he stepped down from several public boards. Not forced. Chosen. He kept the foundation but restructured it. Less legacy branding. More direct community investment. His father disapproved. For the first time in his life, Elias didn't negotiate. He built something quieter. Smaller. Honest. He started visiting schools personally. No press. No announcement. The first time he walked back into Zaria's literacy center after 3 years, he did it with paperwork in hand, a grant proposal, anonymous. He left it with the director. No signature. No Whitmore branding. Just funding. He didn't expect to see her. He didn't. Meanwhile, Zaria's engagement had lasted 18 months. Daniel had been steady, kind, present. But love cannot be forced into permanence just because it is safe. One evening, sitting across from him in a quiet Queens restaurant, she realized something difficult. I respect you, she said gently. I know. I care about you. I know. But I don't feel fire. Daniel smiled faintly. I wondered when you'd say it. She blinked. You knew? I'm a surgeon, he said softly. I recognize when something isn't fully alive. There was no anger. Only acceptance. You deserve passion, he told her. And you deserve certainty. They parted with grace. No broken dishes. No dramatic exits. Just two adults acknowledging truth. Another year passed. Zarya expanded her nonprofit citywide. Her name became known in education circles, not as someone's almost wife, not as someone's almost love, but as herself. One autumn evening, she attended a literacy awards banquet in Manhattan. Not glamorous, meaningful. She stood near the back of the ballroom after her speech, speaking with colleagues. Then she felt it. Not nostalgia, recognition. She turned. Elias stood near the entrance. Not in a custom tuxedo, not surrounded by press, just in a simple black suit. Watching her, he didn't approach immediately. He waited until she finished her conversation. Then he walked over. Slowly, carefully. "Congratulations," he said. Her expression remained composed but softer than it had been years ago. "Thank you. You've built something extraordinary." "So have you." He blinked slightly. "You noticed?" "I read," she replied. A faint smile touched his lips. They stood facing each other, no ghosts between them now. Just history. "You look different," she said. "I am." "How?" "I stopped living for rooms I don't respect." She studied him. "And your father?" "He's still my father. But I don't confuse his approval with my identity anymore." That answer landed differently than it would have years ago. She nodded slowly. "I'm glad." Silence. But this silence felt lighter. He spoke carefully. "I heard about Daniel." Her eyebrow lifted slightly. "You keep tabs?" "No," he said calmly. "The city talks." A brief pause. "I'm sorry it didn't work," he added. "I'm not," she replied. "It taught me what I need." "And what's that?" "Courage." The word hung between them. He absorbed it without flinching. "I'm not here to reopen anything," he said quietly. "I know. I just wanted to see you." She believed him. That was new. "Do you still believe in forever?" he asked gently. She considered the question. "Yes," she said. "But I don't believe in fear pretending to be responsibility." He nodded once. "Neither do I." Another pause. Then she asked the question that mattered. "If we tried again, what would be different?" He didn't rush. Didn't dramatize. "I would choose publicly," he said. "Not privately." Her eyes searched his face. "I would stand beside you when it costs something. A beat. I would fight before negotiating." Emotion flickered across her expression, cautious, but present. "And if it cost your name?" "My name survives." "And if it cost your position?" "My position isn't my worth." The words were steady, unshaken. She inhaled slowly. 3 years ago, he would have said similar things, but with doubt beneath them. Now, there was none. "You hurt me," she said quietly. "I know. And I rebuilt without you. I know. I won't shrink myself to fit into your world. You won't have to." Silence again. Then she asked, "Why now?" "Because I'm finally choosing without fear." Her gaze lingered, searching for cracks, finding none. The music in the ballroom shifted softly behind them. People moved around them. But for the first time, neither felt rushed by expectation. "You'd have to start from the beginning," she said. "I want to. No shortcuts. None. No private promises. Public ones." She almost smiled. "Slow. I have time." Another pause. This one felt different. Hopeful. She extended her hand. "Dinner," she said. "One dinner." Relief flickered across his face, but he contained it with maturity. "Just dinner." He took her hand. No fireworks. No cameras. Just contact. Warm. Real. 6 months later, Elias stood beside her at a modest community fundraiser in Brooklyn. No gala. No chandeliers. Just folding chairs and handwritten banners. A reporter approached unexpectedly. "Mr. Whitmore, are you officially supporting Miss Bennett's expansion project?" He looked at Zarya, then back at the reporter. "I'm supporting my partner." No hesitation. No calculation. The word settled publicly. "Partner." Zarya met his gaze. This time, she didn't question it. Because he said it in daylight. Not on a rooftop. Not in private. But in front of the world. And he didn't flinch. Later that night, they stood again on her Brooklyn rooftop. The same one from years ago. The skyline hadn't changed. They had. "You once told me not to promise what I couldn't protect," he said softly. "Yes. I won't promise forever tonight." She tilted her head slightly. "No. I'll promise today," he said. "And I'll fight for tomorrow." She smiled fully this time. "That's better." He took her hand. "Do you believe in us?" She looked at him carefully. "I believe in who you've become." He nodded. "That's enough." The wind brushed past them. Not dramatic, not cinematic. Just real. And this time, when he chose her, there was no hesitation. Before we close this story, tell me something honestly. Do you believe love deserves a second chance if the person truly changes? And if this story moved you, share your thoughts below. Because sometimes, the greatest legacy a person can build is the courage to choose love when it costs something.